in the morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank on WCCS AM 1160, FM 101.1. Bob Pollock joins us this morning on the telephone. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. How are you today?
Wonderful. Good to have you with us. If somebody wants to call, Bob's on one line, but 479-1160 remains open for anybody who wants to call and ask Bob a question. Bob, I have something for you today. This is good.
Really?
This is good. Have you heard of the Soil My Undies Challenge?
I vaguely remember hearing about that, but fill us in.
Okay, I'll fill you in. Burying a pair of underpants in a field might not seem the obvious starting point for the perfect roast, but farmers are being urged to dig deep for tastier meat. Beef farmers and sheep farmers are being urged to take their underpants, bury them in the field, and here's the theory. You dig up the pants after just 2 months, and by doing so, it's possible to judge how healthy the land is. The theory being that the cotton in your underpants or any other garment you choose to bury would be devoured by the microbes and bacteria in the soil, so the more you have, the better. So that you bury them in different fields, and you can tell how healthy the soil is by digging them up and finding out just how much cotton's left. If they're practically gone from the various bacteria eating away at them, that's good soil.
How about that?
Yeah. Who needs the soil test?
I read that research report. It was several months ago, but yes, I came across that too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you got the. Did you see the photograph of that?
I did. I'm hoping that those were clean before they went into the ground. That's all I'm saying. But
well, if they weren't, maybe there were more bacteria and things in there that they would decay faster.
Careful now. Healthy soil should be teeming with millions of tiny life forms: bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, arthropods, earthworms. All work to turn rotting material into nutrients to help plants survive. So the more you have in there, the better. And so if you bury a piece of cotton in your underpants, then if you're wearing silkies, it doesn't work. But if you bury a piece of cotton,
that's correct. We need these naturally made cotton, and that works much better. Yes.
So there's no reason that wouldn't work in our vegetable gardens, right?
Well, that's true.
Okay.
You could take that and apply it to that instance, and it should be able to help us define whether we have our organic matter levels where they need to be, and if our soil is healthy or not.
Or you could just go through the soil testing process with your office.
Yeah, and there's actually two kind of. So we've got the regular soil test kits for testing the nutrient levels and the pH,
mm-hmm.
and it's still a good time of year to do that, because if you do need to make amendments, especially by adding lime, or maybe the pH is too high and we need to go the other way and make it more acidic and add sulfur, both the lime and the sulfur need months of being mixed into the soil for the reactions to occur that are necessary to either make it more alkaline or more acidic. So still a good time of year to do that, and so that we have months over the winter and early spring for those reactions to occur and adjust the pH to where you need it.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of this underwear test, Cornell University has a soil health test that they've developed, and you can actually take a regular soil sample and you send that sample to Cornell, and then they will do more in-depth analysis on it, and they have a bunch of different characteristics that they will test, and then they will come back with a report that gives you, they call it their soil health report. So it's measuring more things, and some of the microbial activity and the organic matter and soil compaction. There's actually a part of it where you can, and you're supposed to do this, but you take it, they actually have a tool that you can use to test whether there's soil compaction or not,
mm-hmm.
Because that influences how productive the soil will be. The more compacted it is, just like if we walk and make a path, whether it's a deer path or a human path. After you walk in that same path a while, it becomes dirt. Nothing grows there. And that's because we've compacted all those soil particles together and nothing will grow. Occasionally a few weeds will still grow in that mess, but not our good plants that we're trying to grow.
Uh-huh.
But anyhow, so you can get that. That's another type of measure that actually can be quantified, and you can get that report back as well.
Okay. So you mentioned something there that I thought was pretty important, and that has to do with the timing of getting good nutrition to your soil. I would assume that if you put it in now, that gives it time to work itself in and become a part of the soil and boost the soil's vitamin content, for want of a better term. More so than if right before you plant your garden, for instance, you throw a bunch of stuff down. Would I be correct in that assumption?
Yeah, and we don't want to do that with everything. Nitrogen's one of those nutrients that we need to be careful with. Phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, those all will pretty much stay in the soil. As long as the soil stays there, we can mix those nutrients in, and they'll stay there. Nitrogen is much more mobile. So nitrogen can be in a gas. So in a typical, when we're standing in the air, 80% of the air is nitrogen in a gaseous form, but we can apply that, change its characteristics a little bit, and make it a liquid or make it a solid. And once it gets dissolved in the soil, it can be moved.
Mm-hmm.
It can be leached out. So when we get a lot of heavy rain, and that all that moisture, water either running off or percolating through the soil, it can get moved. And we want to try to avoid that. So we usually try to put nitrogen on much nearer the time that we're actually going to grow the crop. Now, If you have a perennial crop there, then we can, of course, put it on more often because the crop's there to potentially use it, not so much in the winter, but at other times of year. But those other nutrients, as long as we keep the soil there, those will get chemical reactions and bound to the soil particles and tied to them, that those we could put on now, phosphorus, potassium, and they'll be okay there, for the winter.
I have another question.
They can kind of get ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
A question that was asked of me to ask to you this week, and take a shot at this one. Someone asking me, when it comes to the leaves that fall in the autumn, and they get them chopped up with their chopper, and so they have nice, ready-to-decompose leaves. They were wondering if putting one type of leaf, say a maple over an oak or some other type of leaf, if there's one that's better than another, or if basically it's all the same thing in terms of the nutrient value. And are there ones that would be particularly harmful to put on the garden?
For the most part, it's probably not worth trying to separate those out. The biggest benefit from any of those leaves will be the act through the decomposition of those leaves and the organic matter that it adds to the soil.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the overall importance. There will be some variations in the amount of nutrients that would be in a particular, an oak versus a maple, but not enough to
It's not going to make a
time
difference.
to try to separate that out or just use one over the other.
Mm-hmm. Would the same thing apply to animal waste, manures that you put down? One animal you should avoid putting its waste on a garden or anything of that nature? Hello?
When we get it, of course, dogs and cats,
You don't want that
that
stuff.
is no, we don't want any of that on a vegetable garden especially.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get into cows and sheep and pigs, and those are all acceptable, horses, those are all acceptable manures to apply.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we used to not think too much about when we did that. We did it when we needed to do it and when we could get it on the field. But if you're in vegetable production, we want to be more timely now with those types of animal manure applications. We want to have as big a window, at least 120 days out from application to when we would start to harvest a crop.
Oh, okay.
Just to give extra time in case there'd be any microorganisms in those manures that could potentially cause somebody to get sick from eating produce. We want to, preferably, we'd like to have that composted ahead of time versus fresh. But getting it on fresh, getting it worked into the soil, being at least that 120 days out gives us factors of safety there that we're not going to have any problems when we get the vegetable crop in and are getting near harvest.
So 4 months, that's a 4-month period. You ought to get it in now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So fall application is a great time to do that, yes.
All right.
And there's not a lot of variability in the nutrients that are in those manures. Poultry manure is a little bit of an exception. It has a higher nitrogen, ammonia content, so that's one that can get a little bit hot. It has a little higher value, so you don't need to put as much on. We don't have so much of that around here, but other places in the state, that's their manure of choice because they've got so much of it available.
Okay, there he is. He's Bob Pollock.
Run into problems with that.
And we're out of time. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
You are welcome.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too.
It's Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank, WCCS, AM 1160, FM 101.1.